What's going on? Alex here. Today, I'm answering your questions from the YouTube comments. That's right. You post questions, I provide the answers. It's a beautiful thing. And this question has to do with what the best way is for a person with no accounting background to become an enrolled agent or an EA. So the enrolled agent credential is one that is issued by the IRS itself for professionals that essentially can represent taxpayers before the IRS, and it also allows you to file taxes on behalf of taxpayers. There's all sorts of other benefits as well. But in general, an EA is an expert in federal income taxation. That's all good. What are the downsides of the EA credential before we get onto the question? And one of the downsides is the fact that not that many people are well versed in what an EA actually is. You have people that are familiar with the CPA credential. You have people that are maybe familiar even with certified financial planner, but enrolled agent people aren't really all that sure about. They sound like, oh, this is an IRS agent. They get a little nervous. They don't really know what to make of it. So the EA credential is one that you obtain after you take 3 separate exams known as the SEE, or Special Enrollment Exam. Once you get through it, essentially, you can call yourself an enrolled agent. You can hold yourself out as one, represent taxpayers before the IRS, all sorts of different benefits. In terms of taxes, there's a few different areas in which you would need to focus as an EA. One of those is the individual side, where it has to do with standard deduction, residency, dependents, things of that nature. Then there's the business side, when you're really looking at the applicable income and expense deductions that may be available for business purposes. You're dealing with financial statements. You're looking at different sorts of income possibly and how to classify different expenses. It gets a little bit more technical. With that said, the accounting background really comes in on the business side of things, and that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of having an accounting background. On the individual side, it's really arithmetic that you're going to be dealing with. So it's not that you're putting together financial statements all that much or having to classify transactions or be too well versed on the accounting side on the individual aspect of taxation. But as soon as businesses are involved, then you have to understand the concept of income, the concept of expenses, different expense categories. Depreciation especially comes into play because depreciation can be different for income tax purposes versus book purposes, right? So you have book depreciation and income tax depreciation. A lot of different perspectives there on the business side. And at that point, you really need to make sure that the accounting background is in place so that the tax elements or the tax interpretations can make sense to you as well. Now, in terms of the EA exam itself, the book that I used is right here, this bad boy. And this is the specific book that I had to dig up for you that essentially got me through the exam. And as you can see, this is a 800-page monster, and I got through this in about 30 days. I scheduled the exams about 10 days apart, and I gave myself 10 days per exam and got through this very book. This is not a paid endorsement. I don't get any revenue, commissions, or anything like that. I could just tell you that this book by itself, for the most part, got me through all 3 sections of the test. And it's separated into the various sections of the exam. So we can see here in the beginning, it's based on individuals. And some of the issues at play are tax returns for individuals, taxpayer filing status, personal and dependency exemptions, taxable, non-taxable income, dividend and interest income, basis of property, things like that. So a lot of those aspects have nothing to really do with accounting per se. So debits, credits, all of that doesn't really play into it. You're not dealing with financial statements all that much. So for the first part of the enrolled agent exam, you really don't need the accounting background. You should be all good to go in terms of taking the exam and not having to deal with any sort of accounting issues that would hold you back. On the other hand, on the business side, which starts at around page 347, that's when having an accounting background can help you. It could also hurt you. I could just say that. Because when I was in my MBA program to get an MBA in public accounting, the tax classes made absolutely 0 sense to me. I didn't understand what was going on. I had a pretty good professor too, so it wasn't that the instruction wasn't high quality and top notch, but what I was getting from it was not coming through to my brain for whatever reason. And I vowed at that point that I'll never do taxes. This is something for crazy people that I would not get involved in. It made no sense. Capital gains, non-taxable income, all this crazy stuff. So what I did was avoided it for as long as possible after getting through those classes. I don't know how I even made it out. But at the end of the day, my understanding from an accounting perspective clashed completely with the tax side of things, and that's why I didn't reconcile. But over time, I was able to wear two different hats in terms of looking at it from an accounting perspective and looking at it from a tax perspective, understanding the differences, and then being able to really reconcile it all together. So, long story short, if you are interested in obtaining the EA credential, I would say dive right in. Start learning some of these different concepts and take the individual exam first. Schedule that and then the other exams after that so that you don't need to build the accounting background while you're taking that first section. However, for the second section, you do want to go through some online courses, see some YouTube videos, understand the accounting side, and then apply the tax interpretations and the tax concepts to that. That's going to give you a strong foundation and allow you to speak both from a book perspective and the tax perspective, which allows you to provide that much more value for clients. Because sometimes individuals have blinders on in that they're focused only on the tax side. They can't talk traditional accounting with their clients, and there may be a disconnect there because clients may not speak the tax language and you might not speak the accounting language. So you want to be on the same page there, have those lines of communication open. And with that said, you want to be able to talk from an accounting perspective and talk from a tax perspective, because something may be deductible on the accounting side and not be deductible on the tax side. One of those examples is business meals. Well, it used to be business meals and entertainment. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act eliminated the entertainment for federal purposes. So we're talking about business meals. And if you have $1,000 in business meals at the book level, you're only allowed a 50% deduction at the tax level. So a client might be asking, hey, wait a minute, I gave you $1,000 in business meals, only $500 ended up on the tax return. What's the deal? And you can clearly see, even in that very simple example, if there's a disconnect between what you're talking about and what the client's talking about and the different languages that you're speaking, there's going to be a misunderstanding there, and you're not going to jive as well as you need to jive for there to be a beautiful relationship. So in terms of the question here, pursue the EA credential. I encourage you to do it. There's no downside to it. It's always helpful to understand taxes. People are going to love you at parties, believe me. And aside from that, the individual section, don't be afraid of the accounting background holding you back. But as you're studying for that individual section, also absorb the accounting basics. Get yourself through some courses. There's plenty of free materials available online to understand the fundamentals, the building blocks on the accounting side, the debits and credits, how it all works together. That's only going to help you once you pass the first section and schedule the second section and start studying for it. It's going to make that much more sense because you've taken the time to build that foundation. Don't be like me in that you use your accounting viewpoint and try to apply it to taxes. Just know it's two different things. There are some things on the tax side that don't exist in traditional accounting and traditional accounting that doesn't exist in the tax side. And keep those separate in your mind, but know how they connect, because that will make you ultimately very deadly and very valuable in the tax side of things, because you could talk to business owners that know about accounting. You could talk to business owners that understand taxes, and overall, you can have a well-rounded sense of what's going on so you can explain it cogently and gain confidence from your clients and provide value, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. I wanted to get into a bit more detail with regard to the EA exam, and I see somebody left a nice chat here saying that they're studying for the EA right now, and you got an accounting degree in 2012. Amazing. Just don't be like me and confuse the tax and the accounting sides, because sometimes they don't quite fit together, the puzzle pieces, all that well, so don't get confused and you'll be all set. But in terms of the EA exam, let's take a look at a bit more detail here. This is the Prometric website. Prometric is the service provider that is used by the IRS to administer the exam. And you have these three sections lined out here. So individuals, you can click on this link and it'll show you all of the concepts that are possibly going to be tested on that first section of the exam. So there's residency status, filing requirements, taxpayer filing status, sources of income, applicable deductions, itemized versus standard. All that's really arithmetic for the most part. And there are some other things in terms of taxability of wages, salaries, and other earnings. interest income dividends. You learn about qualified dividends and the fact that there's a preferential tax rate there. So all that is good stuff to know, and it's more importantly valuable, but you don't need to get into the accounting all that deeply. Now, let's look at part 2. This is where the accounting will be more useful, and here's why. We're looking at sole proprietorships, partnerships and joint ventures, corporations, S corporations, LLCs, tax-exempt entities and associations, accounting periods in terms of tax years, accounting methods. You're going to learn about the cash method, accrual method, hybrid methods, all this different stuff. Reporting requirements, hobby versus business determinations, loss limitations. In terms of partnerships, understanding how they function is crucial because you have different partners. They have capital accounts. You need to track those. There can be income and expense allocations. You need to know that your percentage ownership doesn't necessarily translate to your profit allocation percentage. So always good to keep track of those things and know them before you even start studying for this stuff, because this could be an overwhelming avalanche if you don't have the proper background. Then we have corporations in general. It's helpful to understand that corporations, if you're talking about C corporations, have double taxation that may be applicable. So certainly that's something to take into account. Earnings and profits can be a complex concept in and of itself. Accumulated earnings tax and so on and so forth. S corporations have all sorts of other requirements, reasonable compensation, distributions, shareholder basis. As you go through this, you'll see that there are many different financial statement-based and accounting-based concepts. And look at over here, analysis of financial records, income statement, balance sheet, method of accounting, depreciation recovery. That's not really a concept that is available on the book side, but certainly on the tax side, that's applicable. And that's why the accounting background is going to definitely play in much more on this business section 2 of the EA exam. Part 3 is based on the rules and regulations in terms of practicing before the IRS, requirements for enrolled agents, all sorts of ethics rules, procedural rules, things like that. And you could see what can happen if you get in trouble as an EA. So there could be sanctions associated with those issues, and knowing how that plays out is important. They want you to know that if you play games as an EA, there are certainly repercussions that can be applicable. Representing a taxpayer in audits and examinations, there's a whole section on that. As an EA, you can represent taxpayers before the IRS. So with that responsibility comes knowing the applicable rules and regulations. So with that, there's all these different sections. That's really the 3 exams. And in my situation, I was really not all that knowledgeable on the tax side, but I was able to get through it within 30 days. So knocking it out gave me another element I can add to my resume and made me that much more hireable at that point, because you can see this book is from 2014 through 2015. And at that time, I was not self-employed. So I was out there looking for work. And if you can add to the alphabet soup that's applicable after your name, that is always helpful, not detrimental. And if you have the EA and you get the CPA after that, kudos to you, because it's only going to help. A lot of CPAs are not well versed in taxes, and what you're basically advertising out there is, as an EA CPA, you have both of those elements working in your favor, and that ain't bad. All right. So as usual, if you found this video helpful, if this video was valuable for you, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I just might make a video like this to address them. So with that said, hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching.